welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where current affairs meet concepts and headlines become high-scoring UPSC answers. It's July 4, 2026, and today's edition brings two important themes for your mains 2026 preparation. We begin with an inside look at India's defense indigenization journey as the Defense Acquisition Council cleared a fresh set of major defense projects yesterday. Our second discussion focuses on water security in a drying India, a challenge that cuts across climate change, agriculture, urbanization, interstate relations, and sustainable development. To help you write sharper and richer answers, we also bring you a dedicated mains value segment packed with important reports, data points, committee recommendations, and various case studies that can elevate your answers from average to exceptional. And as always, we will conclude with focus prelims pointers for the 2027 prelims examination. And finally, let us begin. So yesterday, the Defense Acquisition Council cleared projects worth more than 52,000 crores, which is spanning based on the Army, Navy, and Air Forces requirements when it comes to the various modern capabilities that our armed forces need. And basically, this will be various fighter jets, there will be various tanks and various other vehicles and missiles and air defense systems and various other things, which also we will be understanding step by step in the following slides. But the most important point in this entire discussion in the first article is that how India is gradually building up the defense indigenization story in the country and why that is so important for us. So firstly, let us understand what happened. Now this is one PIB article and it is very important right now to actually go to PIB articles and read what are the new announcement of various ministries and the sectors. So here we have the defense sector into consideration, where the Defense Acquisition Council, which was actually set up after the recommendations of the reforming the national security system, which actually took place after the 1999 Kargil war. So herein, we actually see most of the defense deals and the defense manufacturing deals get passed through. So in this way, yesterday, 52,000 defense boost was given in our country, where we are trying to procure and manufacture drones, surveillance systems, missiles, air defense indigenously in the country itself. And this is exactly why this is very significant, because Defense Acquisition Council is a apex executive body which is functioning under the Ministry of Defense. And the main objective of the Defense Acquisition Council is actually to upgrade our military capabilities in the country. We have seen in the recent times there are so many conflicts which are going in the world. Also in the neighborhood, we have seen how in the past few years we have had so many operations. The recent one was Operation Sindoor, where we have also seen how our air defense systems was tested by incoming rogue Pakistani drones. We have also seen how China is actually speeding ahead in their own defense production. So this is exactly why we have the DAC to look into how we can improve our military capabilities and also within some specified time frame. So here we have the defense minister who is seated at the center, and we also have the various chiefs of the armed forces from the Army, Navy, Air Forces. On the other hand, we also have the chief of defense staff and various other defense secretaries and former government officials and experts when it comes to advisory roles also. So this is where we have to understand that as of yesterday, let us understand step by step. Firstly, from Army perspective, then naval perspective and armed forces perspective, what are the new deals which were signed. Now, note one thing guys, whatever the deals that we are seeing here is actually given the tag of acceptance of necessity. This means that the government of India has told that, okay, we need these kind of drones, surveillance systems right now, and that is why in the near future, we have to start manufacturing them. And let us actually give the contract and the projects to our local companies, Indian companies, also various MSMEs and startups are operating in the defense production arena. So we will be giving them the projects and they will be coming up with a timeline, and after that we will be trying to buy the same from them. So the main thing which I am trying to say is that this acceptance of necessity does not mean that yesterday only we purchased all these drones. It's like that the government has released a tender, a contract, so that right now the private sector can take up the manufacturing. Also the various defense, central public sector enterprises or the PSUs in the country can also start producing the same. So this is exactly what has happened. So yesterday, for the armed forces, we got Akash Tarang, which is actually an anti-UAV electronic warfare system. This is actually one warfare system, one digital system, which is deployed to actually intercept and damage the incoming drones. So you have seen during Operation Sindoor, Pakistan sent a lot of drones and a lot in numbers in India. So that is how we have to intercept them, block them. This was also seen in the recent Ukraine crisis, Nagorno-Karabakh region also. So this is why we have seen how drones are increasingly becoming important in warfare. So we have to stop them, and that is why the technology is needed. Also, on the other hand, man-portable anti-tank guided missile. By the name only we can understand this will be one missile system which we can actually hold on our hands, on our shoulders, and we can launch the same to destroy an enemy tank. Also, we have signed the deals for medium-range surface-to-air missiles. We all have heard about the S-400 system, right? So the S-400 system is like, you have a long range missile defense system in the country. So this is actually based on Russian technology, where these are actually sets of missiles which we release when we want to intercept other incoming missiles, right? But this is for long range targets or long range intercepting missiles. We also need some medium range too. So this is exactly what we are talking about. We also have signed for the V-SHORS, very short range air defense system. So this is actually working on the medium level. This is actually working on the short term range. On the other hand, we also have signed for active protection system, which is again a tank self-defense system, jet-based kamikaze drones. So this will be drones which you will be launching, and the drones will actually go to the enemy target and almost will be committing a suicide attack with the drone itself, because these drones are actually fitted with explosives. So whenever they go to the target, they explode along with the enemy target there. Also, on the other hand, when we come to the naval side, so here we are actually boosting the concept of sea denial. Sea denial is actually not where we want to control our seas. We have to understand one thing, guys. For example, we have the Pakistan country here in the Arabian Sea. We also have so many major world trading points such as the Malacca Strait, right? We also have the Strait of Hormuz, which is always in the news right now, Bab el-Mandeb, Mozambique Channel. So these are actually areas where more than 80% of India's trade, energy deals and everything passes through. So definitely we have to safeguard the entire Indian region, right? So this is where the Indian Ocean region need to have better capabilities, and none other than Navy can do this. Our Indian Navy, that is why, has procured multi-influence ground mines. These are the mines which were also in the news due to the Iran conflict which was happening. It was told that Iran actually fitted the Strait of Hormuz and the surrounding regions with many mines, so that enemy countries, according to Iran, they cannot actually enter the region. So we also have signed up for that. We need such systems if at all a need comes in the future that enemy naval vessels are approaching in the country, and whenever they approach too close to the mines, whenever you go too much close to the mines, they explode. So this is the main reason why we are procuring them. On the other hand, naval shipborne unmanned aerial systems. Though these will be nothing other than drones like this, if you see. So what we are doing, we have the aircraft carrier in the country. You can name them in the comment below also. So from here only we will be launching drones, and this is actually an exclusive naval facility in the country. So this also we have tried to procure. On the other hand, to actually test our submarine capabilities and to test the new technologies, especially the air independent propulsion system and the various other Scorpion class and the nuclear capable submarines, for them we need testing facilities, right? So for that we need to develop more of them, and that also has been launched, correct? On the other hand, look at the various other projects of Navy from 2020s to around 2025. So given if there is any question in your mains examination as to if they are asking you for the overall security of the Indian Pacific Ocean, please comment on what are the various steps that the government of India is taking. So this will be one of the steps, guys. This is where we are talking about boosting our sea denial capabilities, a very important term for your mains also. Now, when we come to the air forces here, So this is where we are getting a very new technology which is known as the HAPS. This is actually an unmanned aerial vehicle. This is almost like a drone, and it can fly up to 20 kilometers up in the atmosphere. It can stay there for months because it is actually independently powered by solar energy. So it is very simple. For example, imagine one case where our armed forces need to, mainly the air forces, need to do some reconnaissance activity or simply surveillance activity or spying activities near the border. We can easily do that because these are unmanned vehicles and these can stay in the air for weeks, right? So that is why we can actually scan the border areas of our country, wherein we will look into if there are some new terrorist organizations operating there or not, if China is building some new border villages or not, or in cases of various disasters, right? Or even in telecommunication, we can use this properly, right? And this is where it will be very useful for us, mainly in the border areas and in the maritime areas also, where the terrain is actually very difficult for human beings to go to. Land borders are actually very long, and also islands and oceans are there. There can be some disaster prone areas. So this is where human forces are better utilized to actually operate these drones and actually try to understand what is going on those particular regions. So this is also a very new end technology that we are getting here. So this is actually where the government of India is trying to procure for the three forces. And mind you that these three projects across the armed forces are nothing but a grand plan of India to do something that is known as defense acquisition procedure. You know guys, all of us know that the fighter jets, the tanks that we use, the submarine fleet that we use, most of them are actually not fully manufactured in India, right? Now, what is the problem with that? The problem is, firstly, we are dependent on some foreign countries to supply those to us, right? Secondly, whenever we buy from the foreign countries, we have to pay in dollars. So it leads to a lot of outflow of dollars from the country. And eventually, maybe a long-term rupee depreciation also happens due to such huge and expensive defense deals. Third, perhaps the most important thing, is actually the equipments, parts, and the software. For example, imagine Rafale jet or various missiles that we are procuring from other countries. All the systems require various sophisticated softwares, some literally patented equipments that these private foreign companies, defense companies, they give to us, and they have patented it, and we cannot modify them too much. So it is actually better for various reasons to do the manufacturing when it comes to defense in India itself. And that is exactly why in 2020, this DAP was formalized, wherein we gave some priorities for the various defense products that either we are going to manufacture or we are going to buy from abroad. Now, we are not focusing too much on the buying part here from abroad, because that is, if you see here, on the lowest priority of this entire defense acquisition procedure. So for example, imagine that our Prime Minister and the Defense Minister is actually in a meeting and discussing that India needs these kind of drones, these kind of AI-enabled defense systems, or various amounts of air defense systems. So the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister would firstly agree to go for the first few priorities. That is, we have to firstly focus on the items and the defense products which are indigenously designed in India, developed in India, and manufactured in India. Now, if we do not get this, then we can actually move on to buy Indian, that is made in India, but design may not be fully Indian. Design can be inspired from, say, some Israel component, or say some France component, or say some German component. Now, the third will be, initially we can import it, and domestic manufacture can take place under various licenses, right? So this means that buy and make Indian. After this, we have make one and make two categories. This is where the government or private sector will be involved here, where indigenous development programs will be started, where we are actually still dependent on foreign technology, right? But we are trying to increasingly learn the designs, learn the equipments, learn the skills by collaborating with other foreign defense companies. This is also what we used in various Rafale jet acquisition program. So for example, when we acquired or bought Rafale from France, we also gave various clauses that if we are buying this much crores of Rafales, you actually have to come to India and you have to maybe assemble them in India, or you have to maybe collaborate with a local private Indian company for defense purposes. So these are the various programs which go on. Also on the other hand, strategic partnership model is there, where the defense procurement will be done on a foreign basis, but Indian private company also will be having a long-term collaboration. And finally, we will be having buy global, manufacture in India, which will be foreign in design, but manufacture must be domestically. And at the end of the day, if we cannot get all these products properly in the country itself, we have to directly import them. But this is only when no other category can actually meet the demand, right? So this will be the priority. So if you can focus on this, we are mainly focusing on manufacturing these components in country itself, right? Now, apart from this, apart from one initiative, that is the DAP 2020, where we are listing based on priorities what to make in India, what to directly import from the rest of the world. Apart from that, we also have positive indigenization list. For example, say for arms, for ammunitions, for some tanks, for some basic fighter jets, right? We can actually list those items, that those items will only be made in India, right? And right now we have more than 5,000 plus items in this list. So these will be list which can be manufactured only in India. Also, when we talk about the Srijan portal, this is a digital portal here, where most of the private defense companies which are operating in the country, they can go there, they can file their tenders, they can actually seek the approval, where more than 15,000 items have been indigenized in this way, right? Also, there is something which is known as IDEX portal. Now here we are actually trying to collaborate with startups, because the main ambition of the country here is to spill over the innovation in the defense technology. So here we have various contracts which are given to the startups, and more than 600 plus startups already have started working upon it. On the other hand, we also have the defense corridors in the country. Right now in Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, there are some towns and cities in these two states which have come up with a plan for a complete supply chain management of defense production in the country, indigenously in the country itself, right? Also, we have something which we know as a defense procurement manual, where it is guaranteed in the manual that, for example, if there is some MSME producing some bullets for the army, Indian army, right? So that particular MSME will be getting the contract for 5 assured years, so that that MSME can actually be guaranteed of the returns on the investment, and also various other MSMEs can emulate that model. And this is how more and more private companies will be coming up and setting up to have a better defense ecosystem in the country. On the other hand, the draft DAP 2026, the defense acquisition procedure, right, which also can be revised in this year itself, it is proposing that indigenous content should be up to 60%. Also, the way in which the various armed forces, equipments, tanks, missiles are purchased, that also will be streamlined and be made much more easier. So this is actually a draft proposal. We will see what will be the final proposal. But as of now, when we look back to the various years in the past, we have seen over a decade, our defense budget has increased by more than 210%. Our capital expenditure that we do on, for example, various defense roads, say 6,800 kilometers of roads construction have been done by the Border Roads Organization, right? Or around 50,000 crores spent on the Tejas fighter jets. So these are all the capital expenditure that we are doing to have better assets. This has increased by 132%. Next, domestic defense production has increased by more than 4x times. Defense exports to various countries such as Myanmar, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, Seychelles, Nepal, and various other countries, if you can see, has increased by more than 56 times from 2013-14 itself, right? And this is where we also have to understand that over and over a period of time, since say from 2015, by the time when we actually manufactured and developed the Akash SAM, right, because the DRDO developed it, from that to Tejas fighter jets, Mission Shakti, and various other achievements, if you can see, this is where India has went a long way, right? And it is very important for all of you for the exam to actually go through each and every segments here, starting from Tejas to Rudram to Rafale to various other aspects such as INS Adighat and 6 Scorpion Vakshir class of submarines. Please do go through all of them, because in the prelims exam, they actually are going to ask you regarding the various defense technologies. So please do go through this in the handout. And right now, let us actually start to understand why still, despite doing all of these things, we have various issues. Now, the issue, was seen during Operation Sindoor. During Operation Sindoor, the defense manufacturing progress in the country was actually increased. After the operation, India actually needs right now more drones, better air defense systems, right? So this is where, if you see, after the Operation Sindoor, the defense stocks in the Nifty, they have started to gain some traction based on the previous weeks or months before the Operation Sindoor. This means that right now many investors are maybe interested in the government policies that promote defense indigenization, defense manufacturing, fully indigenous manufacturing systems when it comes to defense in the country. So definitely private investors and even foreign investors are coming in India. They're investing in Indian defense scenario, right? So this is exactly why you'd see that more of money is coming in the country. But when we talk about actual private companies in India and how much they are actually contributing to defense production, that is actually at 24%, right? According to the last financial year, that is actually at 24%, and the rest of them is actually contributed by the government. So if you see, almost more than 3/4 is promoted by the government of India. So most of the defense manufacturing is done by the government of India, but the government of India, on the other hand, is trying to promote more private manufacturing in our defense system. So this means that definitely there are some issues that we have to acknowledge right now, which you also should be writing in your mains answers. So firstly, the main thing is that we are actually reliant on the foreign suppliers. This is something that we cannot deny. Even with some technologies that we are trying to indigenously develop in India, such as the Tejas fighter jets, we still import various parts and equipments from General Electric in the US. Even the Sukhoi and the Rafale is from Russia and France respectively. The submarine systems, the air independent propulsion system, we actually borrow from German and French technologies. Electronic warfare systems, we actually model our own system, that is a Shakti system. But on the other hand, it is also loosely inspired when we talk about designs and patents from Israel, France and US. So if you can see that we are actually dependent on those products which were designed outside in India, right? Now, we are actually focusing on defense manufacturing system, which should be fully based in India itself. So, we have to right now clearly distinguish our priorities, that we need assembled in India or designed in India, because only when we design in India, we design all the sophisticated parts, we fit in the new technologies, the new critical technologies such as AI and various other machine learning systems. So we have to design them in the country and then give the technology or transfer the technology to the startups and the other private companies. Recently, Tata and various other Indian companies, others you can let me know in the comments also, have expressed interest in this. So it is actually looking good right now. On the other hand, when we talk about the recent procurement, this 52,000 crore that we recently tried to pass via the DSC, this also has a timeline of 2 to 4 years from now on. So whatever the drones and missile systems, defense system that we have tried to sign on will take minimum 2 years for the private companies in India to manufacture and deliver to the government of India. That is minimum of 2 years. So the timeline is also kind of delayed. Also, when we talk about the testing infrastructure and certification infrastructure of those missile systems and the various other systems, they also are not fully developed in the country, because still we have a lack of skilling ecosystem when we talk about defense systems, because defense is a sector which is highly critical and highly ultra modern, where you need latest state of art infrastructure. And that is why if you see countries such as US, China, Germany, Russia, UK, right, then only we come right here, where we see this is where we discuss the military budgets in 2025. So even countries such as UK, which is smaller than India in size, they are spending more than us. When we talk about Germany, they are also doing the same. So this is where we have to actually understand that the global trend is that most of the countries are increasing the spending on infrastructure and defense installations and manufacturing. We also have to do that, but we have to do that internally in the country, where most of the, say, products that will be manufactured, that can be kept in the country, and the rest should be exported. We can also earn a lot of money from here, and also here we can increase the influence that we have in the region by supplying arms to the various other countries. But definitely we have to do that responsibly too. We should not be supplying extra arms to various other countries too. On the other hand, we have to increasingly transfer the technologies from DRDO, from various other defense organizations in the country, right, to the private sector. Because at the end of the day, the main theme of the topic is defense indigenization and manufacturing in the country. And we also have to learn various lessons from the recent conflicts which have taken place. See the Operation Sindoor, where we have learned that the importance of surveillance systems is very important, right? And at the end of the day, the overarching ambition is to promote everything in the country itself. We have to manufacture the entire scenario in India itself. Now, imagine that you are actually one very senior official in the government of India, right? And you are facing these circumstances. So you pause the screen and read this and let me know what will be the answer to these two questions, and be honest with me, right? This is a case study, so here honesty is always appreciated. Now at the end we have one more means question for you, another means question for your headache. So please do practice this before we move on to the next article, where we will discuss regarding India's water security crisis. And this is actually in context of a very important editorial in the Hindu, which is discussing why we need to develop various innovative techniques, following from various examples and data from inside the country itself to develop a water secure country. So this is where Mr. Nitin Bassi is giving various recommendations as to how we can improve the water situation in the country here. So first, let us start with the various data that we have. Now, I am warning you in the very beginning that there will be a lot of data, but none of the data is going waste, because it is expected that all of you, while you are following this discussion, you are also constantly updating your notes. So I hope you will be pulling up your notes on water security. Do not worry, if you do not have the notes, you can actually go to the handouts and treat them as your comprehensive notes on water security. So let us start with understanding the demand and supply dynamics. You know, India's water demand, right, is only going to increase over a period of time, after which it will decline till 2050. Because over a period of time, it is also expected that the population of the country will also be flattening out, and also there will be various innovative water management techniques in the future. But at the end of the day, presently when we talk about right now, India's per capita consumption of water is actually going to increase only when we reach 2050. So per capita demand for water is going to increase. But on the other hand, if you look, the decline of per capita surface water availability through lakes, ponds, rivers and various other sources of water, we find that is only going down progressively. So here what we are understanding, that demand possibly will be considerably higher than supply of groundwater. This means that definitely in the near future, the water security will be a major concern, because India is home to 18% of the global population, but only has 4% of global water resources. So just let this data sink in. 18% of the world, only 4% of the world's water. So this is exactly why, according to various reports, 54% of India right now faces high to extremely high water stress scenarios, where mainly the water is being used in the irrigational aspects. See here, 83 or 85% of the water is used in irrigation, followed by industry, energy, and various other purposes, right? We also have the domestic supply, where we use the water for our domestic purposes. Now let us look at various other data also, because if you look at this map here, right, this is actually given by the World Resources Institute, very important organization, which is telling that our beloved India will be one of those areas, including even the Gulf countries, the Northern African countries, Southern African countries, right, and even some other parts of the world, which will be classified as extremely high water stress areas. This means that over a period of time, the situation is only going to get worse. So worse that in the article, the author is stating that in India, out of 15 river basins that we have, 11 are already under water stress. People who are facing extremely high water stress is 60 crores. Now, those basins which are actually below the scarcity level are Krishna, Kaveri, Mahi, and Tapi. So this is actually based on Falkenmark index. Falkenmark index is denoting that how much water per person is available in this region, right? So if there is a term which you can use in your mains answer, it can actually add more value to your answers. Now when we talk about major reservoirs, including dams in the country, 13 of them have fallen below 50% capacity. This means less water for irrigation, less water for power generation such as hydropower. On the other hand, look at the World Bank report of 2024. 1 out of every 4 Indian lack drinking water access. Groundwater assessment units, or the sources from where we get groundwater in common language, has been exploited in the country, and there are 10.8% of those various sources of groundwater in the country which are heavily over exploited. On the top of it, what we have right now in the month of June 2026, 40% rain deficit due to the El Nino crisis. So all these data point to only one thing, that over a period of time, India is highly going to become water insecure. And this will put a lot of pressure mainly on the vulnerable sections of the population. Now, we also have one more term which the author has told us, that according to the United Nations University and the recent report, it is told that we are increasingly moving from a situation where we are actually getting less supply of water, which is known as water stress, where we are actually getting more infrastructure failures or droughts or floods and water contamination, which is also known as water crisis. Increasingly, we are moving away from water stress and water crisis. We are having this, plus we have something which we know as water bankruptcy. Water bankruptcy is nothing but imagine this condition where you see that the groundwater is depleting fast. Why? Because of urbanization. Industries demand a lot of water. Because of agriculture, because of less rainfall, because the water cannot be simply recharged due to more droughts and so much weather adverse conditions such as climate change, El Nino. So we have all those reasons due to which, the basic source of water is drying up. It is simply like bankruptcy that we file or generally see in the case of economics. Bankruptcy is generally seen as a situation when a person runs out of funds to operate their business. In this condition, what is happening? All the aquifers that we have underground, which supply us groundwater, the lakes that we have, the ponds that we have, the water bodies that we have in rivers and various other aspects are drying up right now. So according to this report, 75% of humanity is water insecure, and this actually includes India also. Now when we talk about India and come to the governance aspect here, now governance or misgovernance is also one of the reasons why we have this water crisis, because we have to understand that water is essentially a state subject. So most of the state governments are responsible for managing the various water resources and in a very efficient way also. For example, imagine all the river pollution which happens, or the ponds which are actually filled with various other organic substances and pollution and industrial wastes. So these are all the responsibilities of the state government at the end of the day. So the states are actually free to deal with issues of water supply, irrigation, canals, etc. Right? On the other hand, the state governments also give a lot of subsidies. Here they give free subsidies, free electricity to the farmers, and the farmers, they use what? They use the free electricity to install various pumps, and they use the pumps to use the water for irrigation, and they use this at an unlimited way. So much that the states of Haryana, UP, western side of UP, and Punjab and various other surrounding states, they have become groundwater deficient. Right? Now, apart from that, we have so many other states also, right, which are fighting against each other because of the trans-state river. For example, we know about the Kaveri river dispute, the Krishna river dispute. These are actually the rivers which cross various states of the country, right? And that is why the various state governments actually do not agree with the other state governments on how much the water will be shared between the states. So in this, actually the center cannot do too much. The center can only regulate and develop the interstate rivers. But in that aspect also, there are so many disputes which are actually ongoing even at the Supreme Court level. These are unsolved as of now. In fact, if you see, so many tribunals are set up and hear the river disputes. On the other hand, if you can actually understand, because we have water scarcity right now, so we have to use the water very judiciously. So when we talk about the various Indian states and whether they have some policies on waste water management, if you see here, there are many states in the country which are actually in light blue and grey, which do not have a specific wastewater policy. So these states are not able to manage wastewater properly and treat them and maybe reuse it. This is exactly where we have to understand, firstly, what the government is doing, and finally, to understand what the author has recommended us to do in this particular respect. Firstly, the government has set up a separate ministry at the central level, the Ministry of Jal Shakti, which is actually pioneered only for water conservation and various other aspects to boost water security in the country. We also have the Jal Jeevan Mission, which was launched in 2019 to provide clean and potable drinking water to most of the rural houses, right? And here we are trying to cover all the rural houses with a tap water connection. On the other hand, we also have the Atal Bhujal Yojana, where in various states such as Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, etc., they will be benefiting this scheme for 5 years, which has a sum total of 6,000 crore, which has been given to prepare water security plans by the Gram Panchayat. Because at the local level, we need to have these water conservation efforts. And this can be very crucial for the water security aspects too. On the other hand, we have the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, which is trying to promote micro irrigation. Because micro irrigation is actually where we use efficient level of water for the crops, because the main motto here is per drop more crop. So here we are actually trying to balance the use of water via micro irrigation and various other irrigation facilities. On the other hand, when it comes to the conservation of the rivers in the country, the Namami Gange Mission 2, that is from 2024 to 26, is also launched as of now, where it is mainly talking to actually decongest the river Ganga, to reduce the amount of polluting industries in and surrounding the region. And finally, we also have the Mihir Shah Committee recommendation, which is a very, very important one to be cited in your mains answer too, because as of now, this has not been recommended. What this committee recommended, that we have to combine the Central Water Commission and the Central Groundwater Board and have a National Water Commission, which should be a statutory body. Because unless and until we have a overall national statutory body, we cannot effectively manage this water resource properly in the country. Now, before we move on to the way forward, I have two questions for you. Firstly, this 2021 question regarding water management system in ancient India. You let me know by taking a hint into this picture, what can be the answer here? Also, on the other hand, there are so many non-governmental approaches to water conservation too, such as water credit, which is actually a microfinance tool to work in the water and sanitation area, and also to enable the poorer sections of the population to meet their water needs without actual subsidies. So this is not any organizational initiative such as World Health Organization and the World Bank, but it is actually a private non-governmental initiative. So here we have to consider more approaches right now. We have to talk about more frameworks right now to conserve water. Firstly, we have to talk about climate proofing the water infrastructure by actually understanding which areas in the country are more prone to water depletion and water insecurity, right? Such as the coastal areas and also those areas where we have the critical infrastructure, right? For example, in India, we have various AI data centers, right? And you know that the AI data centers need a lot of water. So we need to have a proper action plan as to how we should be treating the water scarce region in the coastal areas versus those areas where we have critical infrastructure which needs water. Right? Now, we cannot tell that we do not need data centers. We need data centers in the country because that is exactly where the world is moving into. Right? So this is where we can actually learn from Visakhapatnam. And also, these are the case studies which you can mention in your answers too. The main initiative in Visakhapatnam is the Urban Challenge Fund, where more than 100 crores have been mobilized to actually make the Visakhapatnam area water secure through various urban transformation plans, through actually plans which can give more rainwater harvesting system and various piping system and various other water conservation aspects. Next, we need to promote circular water economy. So far we have done what? We have withdrew water from the resource. We have then used it and then we have discarded in the drains and the rivers. But what about we recycle it again? Because the recycling market is actually huge in the country, because according to CEEW, the water recycling market is at 3 lakh crore and it can create 1 lakh crore jobs by 2047. And this is also a model which the Thane Municipal Corporation is also following by promoting more than 53 million liters of water per day which they are trying to recycle. Right? On the other hand, we also have to scale micro irrigation right now because of the skewed MSP policies. The MSP policies mainly prefer the rice and wheat system, which are heavily water intensive in nature, due to which various experts also coin that India actually does something which we know as water export, because simply India is one of the largest exporters of rice in the world. And because rice requires a lot of water, we are actually virtually or indirectly exporting our water. And that is exactly one of the main reasons why India is water insecure. So we have to rationalize the MSP system. We have to redesign the subsidies again in a better way, so that we can actually try to channelize the water into industries also, into domestic use also, apart from not only supplying more than 80% of the water into irrigation. So that we need to classify and reclassify the subsidies based on the hectares. For example, right now subsidies are given on per hectare basis. But as of now, more than 85% or 86% of the Indian farmers are actually small and marginal, who have less than 2 hectares of agricultural land. Right? So that is where let us measure on a 0.4 hectare basis, so that more of the small and marginal farmers can also take benefits and large farmers can take less benefits. On the other hand, we need crop diversification by actually moving towards millets, pulses, right? And at the end of the day, we have to strengthen the crop insurance scheme also, such as enrolling more banks into this program and doing a better aspect here. And finally, we have to gather more data. Whenever we talk about reforming the system, when we talk about reforming the system in water security, we have to install bulk water meters in most of the households in the country, so that we can actually track how much water is being used or wasted in this particular way. So this was all for the topic. Now we will be moving on to the mains value addition materials, where the first topic is based on the recent decision by the government of India to open power company bids to 4 China-linked firms. Now, in recent times, the government of India have been giving various concessions to Chinese investments because government of India wants more investments from China, mainly in the power sector and various other sectors too. Because the Chinese companies, they can bring in their own expertise and they can come in the country and invest. So that is why as of May 2nd, 2026, government allowed up to 10% of investment by any Chinese company in India to be allowed under automatic route of FDI. Right? And if you go via the automatic route, you need not take any permissions up to 10% if you are coming from China plus other land border sharing countries. So this was a major change because back in 2020, during the Galwan Valley crisis, when India and China relations were actually at decades low, back then we actually tried to ban various Chinese apps, remember? Also we tried to ban various investments coming from China. So right now what we are doing, we are reversing those scenarios because we actually see so many Chinese companies which are operating in India, and these are actually helping us, for example, in our power security aspects and various other aspects. So at the end of the day, when we can use this in your mains answers, let us, for example, firstly talk about GS2. In GS2, we can use this answer when we are talking about geo-economic realism. Geo-economic realism means that we are two neighboring countries, India and China. We cannot deny each other when it comes to our mutual importance, right? So this is exactly why, despite having banned various investments earlier, we have to right now accept the reality that China is actually a country with kind of better technologies and better state of infrastructure. We can try to take help of their infrastructure in a limited way, not in an unlimited way. Because if you can read here, the finance ministry has told that this exemption for these China-linked firms is valid for 2 years and should not be treated as a precedent which, will be used again and again. Right? So this means that we are actually having still this flexibility to change the policy also. But at the end of the day, this will be better for our infrastructure supply chain dependencies, because when we talk about the power companies, for example, mainly, for example, when we talk about the solar wafer manufacturing business, so this is where China is doing very well, right? This is where we can actually learn from China's experiences and expertise and use that to improve the energy situation in the country. So this was all for this one. So now on to the next one, where we have the Delhi government announcing 8,300 crore clean air plan. So this is actually under the National Clean Air Program, right? So this is a national program which is trying to boost the air quality in various cities of the country. Why? Because if you see, among the top 20 most polluted cities in the world, you can actually see so many Indian cities. And where you see, Delhi is at rank 2. And when we talk about the top most polluted countries, very important as data for your mains answer, if you see, India is at 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th rank. So it is quite a serious thing when we talk about the 2024 World Air Quality Report. Right? Because only 17% of the global cities meet the WHO air pollution guidelines. And what is that guideline? This guideline is this when it comes to the particulate matter contamination. So these are those areas which you can give as value addition in your mains answer. Apart from it, please know that the Delhi government right now is actually collaborating with the World Bank with 65% funding from World Bank. So this is a very good initiative which you can also cite in your mains answer, where a state government is collaborating with World Bank to fight an environmental issue. What are the various solutions that they are doing in Delhi? They are thinking of having some areas of the city where they will be saying that these are low emission zones and no heavily polluting vehicles can be allowed there. Also, Delhi government is thinking of having recycled aggregate manufacturing system, where we are trying to promote a circular economy. We have also seen in the last Analyst where we were discussing about how Delhi adopted that EV policy. Also, Delhi is thinking about urban green sinks, of having more wetlands, because wetlands and urban green areas such as various parks and forested areas can actually improve the overall air quality in the capital region. Now, the next part is actually on a recent statement given by the Chhattisgarh government, because the Chhattisgarh government right now is encouraging the farmers to go for fast growing varieties of crop, mainly because we are facing the threat of super El Nino, and in the future we can also face some water stress in irrigation too. So that is why we have to go for the new crop varieties which can fight climate change and malnutrition too. For example, in India we have 8 varieties of rice which are actually water resistant, and in this article especially we are talking about one particular type of cultivation of rice that is known as direct seeded rice, where instead of transplanting them like the paddy transplantation which requires a lot of water, we just will be directly sowing the rice seeds in the ground. It will be saving 20% of water and 5,000 rupees per acre. And this is why Chhattisgarh is trying to implement this via the farmers, because in India there are 2 states such as Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, which are known as the rice bowl of India. So that is why if we do good efforts in these states, then only we will be having a national water secure architecture. On the other hand, we also should be promoting more pulses and millets, right, which are also water resilient and climate resilient crops. So now we'll be moving on to the last value addition, where OpenAI has actually proposed a very important and novel idea for governing AI technology and also the speed of AI research, because by now that OpenAI, Anthropic and various other AI based companies are having a very high speed of research and development, due to which they are coming up with new AI tools, right? For example, Anthropic came up with their Opus model, Sonnet model. Recently they came also with their Fable model, plus the cyber security model known as Mythos. So all these models are technologically highly superior, so superior that these are creating a lot of disruption in the job market, in the overall aspect, in the stock markets too. So that is why maybe there are various experts who are telling that AI research needs to slow down a little bit. But who will slow down? Will the private companies slow down? No, because they want more profits. They won't slow it down. But on the other hand, AI companies are actually proposing that maybe the government can become a part as a shareholder in their company. So OpenAI has actually pitched that 5% ownership can be given to the US government in OpenAI itself. So this article is actually proposing a sovereign public wealth model. For example, a very important model has been given here, the Alaska Permanent Fund model. So here, based on whatever the oil reserves are there in the Alaska region of US, whatever the money and the revenue will be accruing due to oil business, oil investment wealth, that money and some of the money and the profits will be used to pay the residents of Alaska. So this is where AI systems can also try to model this. So in India, we also can have a national AI law that can mandate that all of the AI firms can give, say, 1% to 5% ownership to the governments, so that governments can actually directly regulate the AI development at the company level itself. So these were actually very important value additions to be cited into mains answer, guys. Now we will move on to the prelims pointers, where the first article is based on a recent case which is going on in the Allahabad High Court, because according to various allegations by various Muslim shopkeepers, they are telling that workers have demolished a portion of their mosque because of a road widening drive. So this is exactly why this topic is coming into picture, because recently the Allahabad High Court has told that the government can acquire various religious sites for public projects such as road building and various other aspects. So firstly, let us understand, what do you mean by Places of Worship Act 1991? So the origin of this act goes way back to Ram Janmabhoomi movement, where it was alleged that various sections of the Babri Masjid were demolished, and after which a particular religious community took over that place. Now this went on to be a national dispute. So that is why the government of India enacted an act that as of now Any religious place cannot be changed after August 15 and 1947. So this tells that the religious character, for example, of a temple is that it is a Hindu temple, of a mosque that it is an Islamic institution, right? Of a church that is a Christian institution. So this means that any place of worship such as mosque, church, they cannot be changed. Their status should be the same as it was as on the 15th of August of 1947. So it was actually a very, very important act in India, and still now it is functioning as one of the most important acts that prevents the conversion of one religious institution into another, right? So it is covering all types of places of worship such as temple, mosque, churches, gurudwaras, monasteries, shrines, or any other public religious site. Where according to section 3, the conversion of any place of one particular faith to another faith is totally prohibited. It is totally strictly prohibited, right? And also, the freezing of status, I mean the religious status, will be the same as on the 15th of August, right? But there can be some exceptions. For example, in 1991, when this act was enacted, the Ayodhya dispute was given exception. Any ancient historical monuments, right, which is covered under the Ancient Historical Monuments Act is also excluded. Also, there can be some other kind of temples or mosque or church and some other allegations, okay, that this kind of mosques or temples were actually changed, the religious characters were changed. So if they were already settled before, they also will be exempted from here. And also some other cases which are mutually resolved will not be allowed to be discussed under this provision. So these are the 4 exceptions that we have, right? So this means that before 15th August, if there is one religious place where it was converted into another kind of religious institution, then that conversion would remain valid. Again, I am repeating, but if that thing is happening after 15th August, it is not permitted. So this is actually to promote more secular tendencies in the country and to denote more freedom of religion in the country. Now let us come into the case here very briefly, because most of the High Court cases are not that important for us to understand, especially when this case is still under discussion, is still actually sub judice. Now what is happening, the city of Varanasi is actually undergoing a huge change, infrastructural change, urban design, redesign is going on. So definitely there are so many projects which are going on. So due to modernizing the areas in and around Varanasi, there are so many allegations that there are some mosques which are being destroyed and they are being converted into roads. Now, remember the provisions of this act. Did we discuss anything regarding roads or infrastructure or public infrastructure? No, right? So, one temple or mosque or church cannot be converted into another religious denomination or another religious character. But this law does not tell anything regarding some temples, some mosques, or some parts of it, if not entirely, being, say demolished, being say removed for road construction. Because if you see, the areas of Varanasi can be very crowded and there can be the necessity of some road passing by the various lanes and the bylanes that we have here, which is also very, very congested. So this means that for public purposes, the Allahabad High Court has actually told as of now that this act, which is a special provisions of this Places of Worship Act, this is actually not talking anything regarding the public purposes, public infrastructural construction, public roads, schools, colleges, etc. So this is what we know as eminent domain. So if the government of India or the state government has a legitimate purpose of fulfilling the public welfare via construction of public infrastructure, then maybe it can have a higher edge than the freedom of religion ensured under Article 25, because Article 25 is also subjected to reasonable restrictions. Most of the fundamental rights in the country are actually subject to reasonable restrictions. Also, the High Court told that, okay, this kind of public infrastructure is secular in nature. Because at the end of the day, the roads and the schools and the other kind of infrastructure which will be considered by the government will be used by everyone. So this is also a secular purpose, right? And that is why the court also reminded that we have the right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition. So if at all some land has been taken away by the government or some project is being done, so we can actually pay the settlement here. So as of now, this was all the case was all about. Now we will also get to know what are the future updates in this case in the newspapers. But as of now, for now, this was all. Now we will move on to the next article, where we will discuss regarding the recent draft released by the Home Ministry that can potentially lead to Ladakh becoming a state in the near future. But as of now, this draft is actually empowering the Ladakh administration to have an elected body. So this is where let us discuss firstly what was the main background, because in the last few months we have seen in the news why Ladakh was protesting a lot. Firstly, we have to go back to Article 370. You know, when Article 370 was revoked, it was actually leading to the formation of two major union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. You know, Jammu and Kashmir got the elected assembly here because the UT of Jammu and Kashmir was an UT with assembly. But the UT of Ladakh was delineated without any assembly. So initially, while the Ladakhi people were actually quite optimistic regarding the scrapping of the Article 370, because earlier they alleged that most of the Kashmiri policies were implemented on them, on the Ladakhi people. Also, most of the policies were Kashmir-centric rather than overall Jammu and Kashmir's and Ladakh-centric, right? So this is exactly why, you know, the local population was actually in the initial phase was quite happy with the scrapping of the Article 370, that finally they will get some kind of self-governance. But at the end of many years, they have seen that, you know, the Ladakh was actually made a UT without legislature. So over a period of time, they are right now demanding full statehood for Ladakh, right? The UT status has, according to them, reduced the Ladakh's autonomy. They also want the state of Ladakh, when the statehood will be given to them, to also be included within the 6th schedule to protect their culture. Also, they should be having their own separate public service commission so that more locals can get government jobs, and finally 2 Lok Sabha seats. So these were all the demands, but as of now most of the demands are not accepted. But this Ministry of Home Affairs draft have come up and maybe will be one of the earliest documents which will be giving statehood to Ladakh. But as of now, we are not getting any immediate statehood. We are getting a customized model for Ladakh itself. For example, a democratic architecture has been proposed in this draft. It is being told that the Ladakh will be getting a UT level elected body. This will be a body where people from Ladakh area only will be elected, and they will be coming here to take decisions on various executive orders, financial orders, and etc. Even the Panchayati Raj institutions will be included as a part of this reform. And at the end of the day, the most important thing will be when the civil servants who are serving in the UT of Ladakh, they will right now report to the UT level elected body. So earlier what used to happen, the center used to appoint the lieutenant governor and the bureaucrats were responsible to that person. Right now, the elected body will be taking care of those aspects here, right? Also, on the other hand, the domicile rules will be framed in such a way that the locals will be getting more representation, more jobs. Also, local tribal land will be protected and outsiders will be restricted from buying local land. Government employment in the UT should be more preferably given to the locals first. Also, local customs should be respected, more provisions, and one of the most unique features of this draft is that the cold desert ecology of the region also has been respected in this draft, so as to give more power and more control to the local people to protect their customs, which also indirectly will be promoting the local economy and the local ecology too. And at the end of the day, the Home Ministry will be retaining the national security, border infrastructure, and law and order situation, where at the end the Leh and Kargil district committees will be functioning together too. Now, the main demand was also to be included under 6th schedule, because the 6th schedule, for example, say the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. These are the areas where there are autonomous district councils, which actually have a lot of freedom when it comes to implementing some parliament law in their areas, or framing various law within their own customs, having their own forms of practices, even punishments, right? So definitely there is a slightly higher degree of freedom if some state would actually get a 6th schedule status. But why the center did not accord the same to Ladakh as of now? Just because of the internal security and the external security ambitions. Because Ladakh is actually located in the border areas, and we all know that the issues that India has with China and even with Pakistan can be made much more worse if we will be getting or will be giving more autonomy to the region. So that is why as of now the center maybe have restraint from that aspect. On the other hand, Article 371, that is subclause A to J, also gives various special provisions for various states in the country, for mainly 11 states. For example, the states of Nagaland and Mizoram has their own kind of special provisions for having some special laws and customs recognized, right, or some parliament law to be applied in their area with original intent or some modification or not, right? So this was also applicable for the state of Sikkim earlier. Right now the state of Sikkim also has special provisions under Article 371F. So exactly this is a direction where we are trying to also give the same status to the Ladakh region too as of now, before giving them immediate statehood. So this will be step number 1. Then step number 2 would be maybe granting them even more authority, right? And at the end of the day, maybe when perhaps the border issues will be sorted out and various other reforms will be made, then only statehood can be given. So this was all for this. Now let us actually practice some questions. 2019 question on the schedules of the constitution. Let me know the answer in the comments below. Also, practice this 2012 question as to which of the following provisions of the Constitution of India has a bearing on education, because since we're discussing some schedules of the constitution, it is important that we get to know the basic features of our constitution too. So let me know what is the answer of this in the comments below before we move on to the next one, where we will actually get to understand why recently the government banned most of the combination medicines which are going on in the country. Now firstly, let us understand what do you mean by combination medicines or fixed dose combination. Now you guys have seen this kind of drugs. For example, this is where we get this first line anti-TB drugs, right? So from left to right we have this kind of drugs, no issues. So this is where one patient can consume individually these 4 kind of medicines and get benefits, right? On the other hand, there are some pharmaceutical companies who have also come up with something that is known as fixed dose combination. So for example, if some company would assume that okay, let us combine all these 4 drugs into one single medicine, simply, that is what we know as fixed dose combination. So if we try to define it, it is a cocktail medicine, you know, that packs 2 or more active pharmaceutical ingredients. APIs or active pharmaceutical ingredients are basically the raw materials of each and every drugs. So for example, for one drug you have one API, for another drug you have another API. So this is the basic raw material of a drug. So when we have a cocktail, you know, which is trying to pack 2 or more APIs in a single tablet or cream or capsule, that is known as fixed dose combination. Now fixed dose combination can be of 2 types. One is rational, another is irrational. Rational, we can understand that okay, the 2 medicines, if we can combine and they are giving me good benefits, right? They are treating my symptoms, they are treating my underlying disease also, they are treating my entire system properly, then it is actually a rational combination where 1 plus 1 is equal to 3, means that I am getting an extra benefit too, right? That is, I am actually being treated of some disease or some issues. But irrational combination means that these 2 medicines, they are mixed without any rational, without any kind of thinking that these 2 medicines can have some benefits or not. simply for some commercial reasons or for some marketing purposes, advertising purposes. Some pharmaceutical companies tell that, okay, I have mixed this medicine 1, that medicine 2, and I have this kind of medicine right now. That is the best of the both worlds. But at the end of the day, you know what? 1 plus 1 will be 1.1. The benefit will be very less, and on the other hand, it can be more risky too. Because for most of the irrational drugs, right, we do not have any clinical data. There can also be unverified chemical risks, because we never know if we can mix two random medicines, what will be the outcome. And at the end of the day, what can happen? Antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic resistance happens when we do not consume medicines in a proper way. For example, most of you, whenever we have fever or some indigestion, right, we take some medicines, right? We take some paracetamol or some other combination of drugs. Now, maybe you have gone to a doctor and the doctor has told that, okay, for 5 days, you have this drug. But you do not do that. After 2 days only, you tell that I am completely fine, I have no issues. But what about the course of the medicine that has been recommended to you? That is 5 days. So if you do not take the medicine for this particular amount of course, for example, then maybe the viruses, the bacteria, will not be completely defeated, right? And the medicine purpose will not be fully served. So in this way, this aspect plus the overuse of antibiotics in our livestock management. For example, feeding poultry, feeding cattle for producing milk. So they are also given antibiotics. We also give a lot of antibiotics in our agriculture also. So we have also a lot of unhygienic treatment at various hospitals where, bacteria and viruses can actually move from one syringe to another. So these are the various reasons why the bacteria, the viruses, the pathogens are becoming more resistant to the drugs or the medicines that we are using right now. So if these pathogens are resistant, then we cannot fight the disease properly with the existing drugs that we have. We need more powerful drugs. And that can have more chemical side effects and various other effects. So this is exactly what we mean by antibiotic resistance. So this is one question based on the concepts that we have discussed right now. So based on whatever we have discussed, you let me know what is the answer in the comments below. And finally, we will understand what is the public risk of the irrational fixed dose combination. Because AMR can lead to more than 10 million deaths a year by 2050. Why? Because due to AMR, the pathogens become much more powerful. And if they become much more powerful, we need stronger drugs, and more stronger drugs can have higher side effects and various other things, plus also can increase the cost of treatment, where many poorer sections of the population, they cannot afford, and there will be additional deaths. Even if you see, most of the deaths will be concentrated by 2050 in Asia and Africa. And one of the most important reasons why this AMR is spreading right now is due to using more of this irrational combination of drugs, due to which recently under section 26 of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940, the government has banned 16 of them. Right? Because whenever we unnecessarily use antibiotic, more bacteria get exposed, and only the strongest bacteria survive, and they multiply, they reproduce this strong bacteria, for which you need more stronger drugs, right? And future infections even can get harder to cure, right? For example, in the case of bacterial diarrhea, so perhaps only this antibiotic is needed, but if you add more extra antibiotics, right, this is not doing any extra benefit. On the other hand, it is making the bacteria even more strong, right? So this means that we have to use the medicines as recommended, and we have to actually refrain from this kind of excess use of drugs. Similarly, the cosmetics that we all use are also based on various fixed dose combinations which are not rational. For example, imagine that someone has a fungal infection on the skin. So what the cosmetic will do, it will be combining maybe one steroid plus antifungal. So what it will do? It will treat your infection on the skin. But if this is an irrational drug, it will actually push the infection inside of your skin. See here, inside of your skin the infection can grow and you can have much more serious issues. So this is exactly why the patients should be well aware of this AMR issues, right? And they must be refraining from any kind of drugs that the government has already prohibited. The clinicians, the doctors, all of them should be not be recommending these kind of drugs. Now, all of you should not be memorizing these things, right? It is only for your reference that we have to keep in mind. So the clinicians, all of them should be recommending the safe approaches when we talk about the use of drugs. Also for the pharmacists, they should be checking the lists which the CDSCO, the drug regulator of our country, is adhering to on a regular basis. And also it has been a recent trend of various clinicians, pharmacists recommending vitamins and probiotics as supplements with medicines. So if it is not needed, then we should not also recommend the same. So this was all. Right now, let us move on to the last article, where the government is right now planning to revive our struggling tiger reserves in the country. Now, based on whatever we have understood as of now, the tigers of our country are highly important for us, because India houses the largest tiger population in the entire world because of a successful initiative known as Project Tiger 1973, which was actually a kind of a centrally sponsored scheme where the state governments also participated to uphold the tiger population and increase them over a period of time. So if you look at it, the tiger population which has grown in India over a period of time, so we have a tiger census almost every 4 years, right? And this is where we use an application known as EMS, which is one application developed in collaboration with the National Tiger Conservation Authority, which is the statutory body, plus Wildlife Institute of India. So in this way, we try to estimate how many tiger reserves that are there in the country and how many tigers are there in the country, right? Now, what we recently find out that there are 3 tiger reserves with 0 tigers at Kawal, at Kamlang and at Dampa. So in the comments, you let me know which are the states according to these tiger reserves. So now let us actually understand what is the paradox here. See, the paradox firstly is that we have an increasing tiger population, but still the government of India is telling that we need urgent intervention because 25 out of 58 tiger reserves have low and absent tigers. So what are the reasons? For the reasons to know, we have to firstly understand the foundational ecological concepts, and the reasons are here itself. So in India, it is being observed that there are 2 types of tiger reserve. One type of tiger reserve is where the tigers are actually in a healthy population. They have a good amount of prey base, such as deers and various other prey, where they can actually hunt them and feed on them and have a good population stability. Such a stability that using this population, they can actually migrate to other forested areas. So whenever they migrate to other forested areas, so they have a good genetic diversity. That means that the tigers are not only present in one forest, they are present in multiple forests. That is known as meta-population dynamics. So for a tiger, it is important, or a tiger's population, it is important that they have a good prey base, they feed on it, they increase their population and they spread their genetic diversity. That is meta-population. And also, why are they migrating? Why would they go to other forests? Because simply one particular forest or one particular habitat, will be having limitation, because one forest will be having limited prey base. So definitely the tiger would migrate to other forests, and that is a good thing. It is a completely natural thing. It has been happening even in the wildlife areas where we see that the tigers actually move in and out of one forest regularly because of some hunting and prey base. So it is completely fine, right? But the thing is, as of now, there are various tiger reserves in the country which are having declining number of tigers, because maybe there is a village settlement around them, agricultural setup is going on. At the edge of the forests, the villages and the villagers are in conflict with the tigers. There are so many infrastructure projects which are going on. Tigers are also being hunted. So this is exactly where the issue is right now, that the tiger population is increasing, but the quality of the tiger population is not sustainable in the long run. In the long run, due to genetic lack of diversity, lack of prey base, shrinking forest areas due to deforestation, expansion of agricultural activities, tourism aspects, infrastructure, wildlife hunting and all those things, tiger population is going down. And this is exactly why our ministers are trying to promote the reintroduction of tiger population in various tiger reserves. So that depleted tiger reserves, for example, mainly in the Sariska tiger reserves, as you can see here in the state of Rajasthan, they will be getting new batches of tiger to fill, right? Because despite population rise, just 10 to 12 reserves house roughly 36% of the entire tiger reserves. 12 tiger reserves, just imagine the condition, have less than 3 tigers in the country. So this is exactly what we have to keep in mind. That as of now, that is why the NTCA and the Wildlife Institute of India have come up with a 25 priority reserves index. The 3 priority areas on which the index will be made will be how much prey is available, what is the quality of the forest and the habitat and the overall ecosystem, and finally how many tigers are living there. We have to acknowledge the reality that many sources, good sources, are becoming sinks of tigers, right? And that is exactly why co-community wildlife management is important, because talk about Panna in MP, talk about Sariska, right? They are actually having a good local collaboration in which the local forest officers are managing the tiger population in a good way. If you also have watched Sherni, you will understand a real life depiction of tiger conservation. If you did not, please do watch it. A very important movie. And finally, we also have to rethink our linear infrastructure migration too. For example, we have to build better green tunnels for tigers, green over bridges for tigers. For example, because there can be one forest area and another forest area located some kilometers apart, and there can be one big highway going right in the middle of the two forests. So definitely we can construct a new tunnel or an overhead bridge for the tigers to safely cross the two forests and maintain their genetic diversity. So this is exactly what this index will be doing in the future, and we can expect better tiger conservation in the upcoming times. But as of now, you solve these 2 questions in the comments below and let me know what is the answer. Also, at the end of the discussion, we have another quiz. Please do attempt it and let me know what is the answer in the comments below. Till we meet again, thank you and all the best to all of you.